We've just got to the end of day 15 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry, Tranche 2, Phase 2. We've been listening to the live evidence of Geoff Sheppard, who was targeted by Bob Lambert. I'm joined by Belinda Harvey, who was deceived into a long-term relationship by Bob Lambert, and Paul Gravett, who gave evidence a few days ago and is very closely associated with Geoff Sheppard in terms of the planting of incendiary devices at Debenhams. Belinda, what do you think of the evidence today?
Yeah, well, I just want to say it came across as really honest, and when Geoff couldn't remember things, he was very clear about that he couldn't remember, and so that makes the things that he does remember, more credible and believable. He came across as completely open and honest. Yeah, I mean, as far as I've not met Geoff too many times, but at least two times I did meet him was when I visited him in prison with Bob Lambert. So, I mean, Geoff couldn't actually remember that, which isn't especially surprising, as it's a long time ago and I was just there with Bob. Yeah, I do remember a few things from those occasions but yeah, I think he came across really, really well. I mean, I actually remember him as being a very, very quiet and introvert person. So I'm quite surprised how open and able, how articulate he was, really. Because it's certainly, as I say, I remember him as being very subdued and very quiet, introverted person. And also it came out in the evidence that Geoff was likely to have been a follower rather than a leader, which would 100% tie in with what I knew about him at the time.
Yeah, no, I mean he was being drawn a lot on some very specific things by Barr, and time specifics. I think he did a very good job of going, look, I don't remember the exact details, the exact days, the exact dates or whatever, but he gave a very fulsome answers around what he did remember and his own role within it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, along with Paul, when he gave his evidence, it really came across that not hiding anything here, everything's in the open, we want to say exactly what happened. And I do hope that Missing sees that and appreciates that. I mean, it's about body language and everything and not covering anything up. So I think, both of them were really open, and that can only help for the truth to come out.
Yeah, Paul, you were asked a lot of the same questions as Geoff. I mean, it's covering the same events. What do you think of his evidence today and yesterday? Careful, don't touch that bit. If the sound's just gone off, please tell me in the comments. There's a slight problem with the microphone. Careful, don't touch that bit, for God's sake. Let me just see.
I thought Geoff was quite impressive and open and honest about things. When he said he can recall things, he was just being honest, and that was the best approach to take, and the one I took. Not to in any way try invent anything or make things up. Just be as open and honest about it as possible. Even when when you don't remember, just say that at times. And it seems strange, doesn't it, to take part in an action like that, placing incendiary devices. You would think, people might think, well, if you do something so unique and out of the ordinary in your life, you would remember it in detail forevermore. But actually, no, that's not the case. There are certain things far more trivial and everyday from around that time I remember maybe in more detail than some of the things leading up to Debenhams. There are certain aspects of it that I do remember in quite a lot of good detail, but others you don't. And of course, some of the evidence I was been able to give in relation to the inquiry in general has been memories that are prompted by entries in my diaries, or might be things written down. But when you're doing an action like that, a direct action, unlawful, you don't write anything down obviously. So there's nothing to prompt you. It's only purely on what you can recall in your own mind. So you don't always remember as much as you might hope.
Yeah, no, I mean it's also 38 years ago. It's a long time, right? It's a long time. But I think I don't think anybody who's followed the last 3 days of questioning would think that anybody was being anything other than completely truthful about what they did remember. I think it becomes very clear that the role of Lambert was definitely that of an instigator at the very least. I think obviously. The evidence of both you and Geoff really sort of marry up. There's a couple of little minor issues of things you remember slightly differently, but for the most part, it's pretty much exactly the same. It'd be interesting to see how Lambert recounts those events.
It will be very interesting to see what he has to say. Yeah, I mean, things between me and Geoff do marry up quite well. There are certain differences in what we said, in certain things we did odd times or something, but by and large, they do. Our versions of it do stick quite closely to each other, and that's supposed because we were just trying to tell the truth as much as we could remember, and. Around some of the certain differences, maybe around the times of when it all began. I know Geoff was initially saying he thought it was in late 1986. I'm fairly certain that it was the spring of '87. But I noticed when he's giving evidence yesterday, he did say it might have been '87. I'm pretty certain it was around that March, maybe time of '87, when we first had the first meeting about. Really trying to think about what from Lambert's instigated it about we're going to do something now. And as I said, the rest of us had been doing direct action, but on a much lower level. And for Lambert, it was all about escalating to something to a much a higher level of seriousness. So that would have been I think around spring of 1987 that all began.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said many times, the way in which in public inquiries work, and particularly the way in which David Barr, KC, decides to do his questioning, it can turn what is quite a explosive, for want of a better word, story around incendiary devices into something quite dull, where the specifics about whether it was the end of '86 or the beginning of '87 take up huge amount of times in the questioning. We had a whole bunch of stuff about the possible arson attack on 72 Galley Lane. Galley Lane. We're still not sure if the house ever did set on fire. Certainly the house that's there now doesn't look like it was rebuilt in the 1980s. So if anybody is aware of is able to look up whether there was a fire there at the time, it would be really interesting. We have been able to do that before by asking on these things. That's why I asked now. Geoff is due to come back to talk about the other undercover officers he knew. Paul was meant to be coming back to be questioned about further undercovers that he knew as well. They'd be the same ones. HM1, cover name Matt Rayner, Andy Coles, John Dines. Have you been given a date yet for when you might be coming back?
No date yet, as far as I know. I've suggested a couple that are convenient. Obviously, I appeared in person this time. I may have to do it online next time, but I'd rather appear. But that was going to be very interesting, obviously, when talking about the other spies that we knew, me and Geoff, and their role in the direct action. I know Geoff will have a lot to say about that as well, because he had a subsequent conviction in the 1990s, which he now says is due to an undercover officer. So that's going to be very, very interesting as well. And can't wait to find out what he has to say about it.
Yeah, that'll be at the next hearing of the inquiry, which is on the 25th. So we've got a week off next week, and then when we're back, it'll be Geoff Sheppard again for a day. The day after, it is Belinda Harvey giving evidence. Belinda, how are you feeling about that? It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, a little bit apprehensive, but I'm looking forward to being able to recount what I can remember from those times. And it's quite striking how all these undercover cops were so embedded in all a small group of people's lives. I mean, I knew John Dines as well, so it's uncanny how everything connects. And Bob Lambert told me in great detail, even though I wasn't really that interested, about what he was up to, and it ties in with absolutely everything that Geoff and Paul particularly and have said in their evidence too. And also Robin Lane, so many undercover cops, they were so interested in this little small group of people. So yeah, it's quite remarkable really, and unfathomable in some ways, especially given that it's starting to look like they were suggesting a lot of these things in the first place. Why is the question. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it does appear that, essentially the modus operandi of Bob Lambert appears to be taking part in things himself and then fitting someone else up as being the person responsible for it. Kind of like the fireman who goes around starting fires and then gets to put them out and get an accommodation for it. We saw a lot actually today about how he kind of drip fed the intelligence that he blatantly already knew because he was instigated, so much of it, that he drip fed that information to his bosses in over the months. The weeks and months after the event, so that each one of his reports had some bit of important information in it, which obviously I think did good things for his career. Paul, is there anything else you want to add before we call it a day?
Well, yeah, just to reiterate what you were saying, really about Lambert, it was for him career building, what he was doing, and he was looking ahead, thinking how he could use us to build a very lucrative career and also achieve some sort of fame and adulation about it as well. He got a commendation, didn't he, from the commissioner of the Met about it, and then later went to become was like the boss of other spies, who targeted people like me and Geoff in the 90s. So yeah, he was all about building his career really, and he's obviously just like a complete egotistical person, as well as a spy. And hopefully we're going to see his downfall very soon. I hope. Revenge is sweet.
Yes, so tune in next week for even more of the downfall of Bob Lambert. Anything else you want to add before?
I just wanted to say as well about Chris Bailey as well. So he's another one in the group of people who have added to the evidence that Bob Lambert suggested, things that they later ended up doing and getting into a lot of trouble for. It's consistent with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one that really sticks out to me from like made up things was him saying that Gabrielle Bosley was like some sort of ALF mastermind, which if anybody saw her evidence, I don't think anything could be further from the truth. But yeah, that's it for today. That's it for the week. Next week's off. We'll be back again on the 25th. Join us from 10 a.m. I'll be doing the Twitter Spaces later on today. I'm not sure what time. I'm heading back to Wales now because I've got the week off, so I'm not sure what time that'll be. But tune in if you can. And thanks for joining. Anything else to say?
No.
Nope. Cheers, guys. See you again soon.